My name is Robert Paul Jester, and I'm from the University of Montreal. My work is focusing on sex and gender in relation to allostatic load. Allostatic load is a measure of chronic stress, or the wear and tear of unhealthy behaviors and chronic stress on the brain and body. And you can think of it as the straw that breaks the camel's back that we measure looking at multiple different biomarkers of the central nervous system, metabolism, immune functioning, and cardiovascular function. Theoretically, allostatic load follows a time course leading from neuroendocrine and inflammatory changes to subcellular changes in cell functioning to secondary and tertiary outcomes. Allostatic load can be measured using an index of different biomarkers that are related to chronic stress. And in early literature, a lot of sex differences that were emerging in higher allostatic load were being explained by more sociocultural variables. So I wanted to look at this further in my career. So birth assigned sex as a variable. This is work by my student Philip Kerr, looking at 62 studies and other studies that look at sex beyond the covariate. The literature shows that allostatic load is higher in men than it is among women. But there's a lot more variation within sex among women with regards to psychosocial variables. So as an example of this, there's gender roles, which is the masculinity and femininity endorsed by people. And in an index looking at 20 biomarkers, we calculated allostatic load in two ways. So one is all-inclusive without regard for sex differences, which is problematic because for these 20 biomarkers, 10 of them are different between men and women. So we also use the sex-specific formulation where our cutoffs were based on distributions from men and women separately. And essentially, the higher an allostatic load, the more biomarkers are dysregulated. And so we found that women had lower allostatic load than men for the formulation without regard for sex. But then for the formulation looking at the sex specific, we unmasked a sex by gender role interaction where men with high androgyny, so high masculinity, high femininity, were the ones showing the lowest allostatic load. Now for sexual orientation, we had a study looking at 20 biomarkers. And to our surprise, we found that gay and bisexual men, predominantly gay men, had lower allostatic load than heterosexual men, which was a surprising finding, explained by lower triglycerides, lower body mass index, and lower inflammation. We didn't find differences based on coming out, but secondary analysis identified that if people were less avoidant with their coming out process, they had lower allostatic load. And in an analysis of the NHANES, we again replicated this finding with 14,000 people, whereby gay men had lower allostatic load than heterosexual men, but bisexual men had the highest allostatic load. No differences were found among women. Moving forward, we're going to be looking at different factors of minority status, stigma in relation to allostatic load and resilience processes.